Hello, and welcome to I Remember When, sponsored by the Gresham Historical Society. I'm Gwenda McCall. Tonight's guest has brought some really interesting stories with her about what it was like in Gresham when the berry crop decided the prosperity of the whole community. Our guest was born in 1899, and she's definitely one of the people that I'd like to be like when I'm her age. I'd like you to meet Ida Bednar. Ida, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Now, I realize that your family came to Gresham in 1920, and you were married in
21.
And so you were 22 years old when you were married.
Right.
And you brought some really interesting things to share with us. First of all, we'll look at this picture of you and your husband taken in 1921 when you were 22 years old. And you brought with you the dress you're wearing and the shoes. Let's look at the dress first. This is marvelous. This is a 67-year-old wedding dress. Tell us about the fabric.
That's a Georgette fabric.
Kind of a crepe.
Right, and it's got a Bertha collar is what they used to call it.
A Bertha collar, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And little teeny buttons down the back.
Then it had a sash around the waist,
Mm-hmm.
tied in the back.
But the sash didn't make it.
No.
This came through beautifully. 67 years
Because
old.
that was different. The sash was different, a ribbon kind of.
And the fabric just didn't last. And what about the shoes? Why don't you take one of these shoes and show us?
Well, I had these shoes, and they were very comfortable shoes, and they're very soft leather in them. And we paid $6 for them, and that was considered a big price for a pair of shoes.
Is that right? And they're quite pointed toes, too.
Yes, sort of a Cuban heel.
They called that a Cuban heel. I never heard
Right.
that. Now, you brought a couple other articles with you I'd like to share before we get into your stories. Show us the washboard.
This was gotten in 1921, and I washed on this. And my grandson, after a few years, he'd seen this, and he said, "Oh, what is that, Grandma?" And I said, and he said, "That's a washboard." And, oh, he said, "That's kind of a do-it-yourself, isn't it, Grandma?"
Do it yourself. That's a great story. I know we've all seen washboards, but you really did wash on that. And my grandma had one of these items on her dresser. Tell us why a dish would have a hole in the top.
That was supposed to be when you combed your hair to put your false hair, or the hair that came on the comb, you know, when you put the comb through it.
So you'd save all the hair that came in the hairbrush and the comb, and you'd stuff it in there.
In
Okay,
there.
what would you do with the hair when it was full?
Just get rid of it, put it
Oh.
in the waste paper basket.
Oh, now that's interesting, because I thought that they would save it and use it underneath buns. They didn't rat the hair then, and it'd be poofy and comb the hair.
Not too much.
They really didn't use that too
For
much.
a little while they did, but they had kind of, by their ears, kind of big. But you'd kind of rat it so it looked bigger.
Oh, for heaven's sake. All right, now, when you were married in 1921, your husband became a farmer. Tell us about the crops that you raised.
Well, then after a while we started to raise strawberries. And in those days, children and all picked berries, anywhere from 10, 12 years old. They'd pick berries. And in those days, they had to make the money to pay for their clothes and also their books and things.
Their school books? The kids pay for their school books?
Oh, yes, as much as they could pay for. The parents, most of the parents in those days didn't have money.
For heaven's sake.
And then when the hard times came in pretty soon, we got 9 cents a dozen for eggs.
Oh, 9 cents a dozen?
And we sold our milk to the berry pickers for 5 cents a quart.
Oh, my word. Now, were there many Spanish-speaking people
We didn't have
doing
any
the
at our
picking?
place there. You really didn't see that. You would see a few Indians sometimes, but we
American
never
Indians?
had any Indians.
Now, the Depression, how did that affect the berries?
Well, you just couldn't sell them. And the cannery just quit taking them entirely. And you couldn't even get 25 cents for 24 helix of them.
Oh, my word.
And for a fact, nobody got them because all the people around had berries. I mean,
Sure.
so you couldn't
Grow
give them
your
away.
own.
So we
Like
took
zucchini.
Yeah, we plowed them down, and then we put potatoes in the ground. And the horses' bellies were just red. You didn't see any tractors around in those days, the first ones that came.
Oh, really?
That's right.
But you had to plow into your crop and put potatoes in? Because you could sell the potatoes, but you couldn't
Well,
sell
maybe we didn't sell the ones we had the year before, and that's why. My husband couldn't get a job at 20 cents an hour at the cannery, and there would be just maybe 50 men out there looking for work. and we got 20 cents a hour, and the men got 20 cents an hour.
Now, in 1930 was when you did go to work for the cannery,
Yeah.
and you worked there quite
for
a few years.
For 20 cents an hour.
My word. Now, let's talk about where the cannery is. Explain to people where it's still there.
Yeah, but it was just really small, real small, and then they put on, there was just a little shed first there, but then afterwards they made a large shed because, you know, when we got up to, in quite a few later years, we got one day we had 311 tons of strawberries alone.
Now, the cannery is located at Hood.
It's on 8.
On N8th, right where light rail stops, right there. And I think Riegelman's is using it now for a warehouse, but it still looks like a cannery.
Well, there's nothing of the cannery part left. I mean, where they run the berries, or none of that. That burnt a few years ago.
Now, tell us what you did at the cannery, though.
Well, I was a grader.
A grader.
And a grader, that means that you take so many hallocks out of or 2 pounds of berries out of the small loads, and then you took 3 pounds out of the larger loads, and then you had different grades that you put them in, like 1, 2, and then pretty soon they learned to cap the berries. So you never had to do that, but before the ladies did the capping of berries.
That's taking the green part off.
That's right.
Capping the berries.
So it was a busy year.
So what you decided, the grade of the berries, decided on how much money the farmer got.
Yeah, and what they would get for the different kinds of pounds, because that went in juice, they got less for, and like that.
Oh, so what they did with the berries too. Well, you have an important job there. Everybody depended on what you decided on a load of berries.
Well, a lot of it, yes.
That's interesting. Now, you said that you saw some berries that were monkey faces.
Well, yes,
monkey face.
they were berries that, towards the last, you would find some of them, the blossoms maybe had been hurt a little bit, and then they'd be around them, there was some berry, but they'd just have faces on them like that, you know. They called them monkey faces.
A funny name. I never heard that before. Now, I thought that during the Depression, when a man had a job, the husband had a job, it would be hard for the woman to get employment. How come you got employment at the cannery during the Depression?
Well, at the cannery, that if you belonged to the cannery, you could get in if they needed you.
Because it was a co-op.
That's right.
For the farmers. I see. All right. Let's go ahead and look at some photographs that we brought. Now, these aren't all taken in the Gresham area, but they're the very similar idea.
Well, there they've got their berry to pick in. And that's what they'd pick their berries in, and then they'd put them in a bigger crate that went to the cannery.
Now, this looks like the 50s to me, with the pedal pusher pants and all. Let's go back a little bit farther, though. Let's go back to the 40s. I really enjoy looking at these with the hairstyles. This looks like over the Wizard of Oz here, right?
Well, that's what they pick berries like that. That's picking strawberries, though, because see, they have their hallocks and things on the ground there.
But there were so many children picking then, and
yes,
you don't have the children
they were.
picking now. Why do you think the difference is?
Well, they can't pick now unless they're 12 years old.
Oh, sure,
But the mothers, even the mothers and the children came out too, because that's the way they made money to go on. And there'd come people from town. And then one year where they didn't have enough money at the Gresham High School, and do you know all the teachers at the Gresham High School gave 1 month of service free of charge. They didn't get paid for the whole month.
Well, I hadn't heard of that
They
before.
donated
That's
that.
really interesting. Now, here is a row of ladies that worked at the cannery, and these cotton dresses just delight me. You can really put this in time, can't you?
That's right. And we all had to wear caps plus hairnets on our hair.
Oh, plus a hairnet, plus a
Right,
hairnet. Because the
right.
cap didn't look like it would keep too much hair off here. I need to take these down. Looks like they'll fall. I'll put a few more here. Now, can you tell what they're doing here?
Well, I think what they're doing there, I kind of think that they maybe are working on 2-pound cans. That's the way our boxes.
Boxes,
and those
2-pound
go
boxes.
into, and everything there went into the freezer, you know, into cold storage.
And they're putting a bag inside the
Yes,
box
yes.
for leaking. This is
And in
before-
those times, those boxes were made out of paper, but they were waxed, the outside of the box.
Huh. But it just looks so primitive to me. You know, you can see the nails on the table. This isn't your modern day aluminum setup here. Okay, and this one you can really tell is the 40s with the saddle shoes.
Yeah, right.
And it says strawberries on these little boxes, and it looks like they're putting a bag in a box.
Well, they have to do that.
And then they're going to fill them down the row.
Right.
And this is a close-up of the same girls.
Well, that's belts where they work at from the
Oh.
back, and then they'll go on, and they're fixing the boxes there where they're clean and ready to be shipped out.
This must have
Into
been
crates.
marvelous employment for the high school girls for summer.
It was. It was. It helped them with their books and everything else.
And this picture,
That's where they were upstairs, and that's where they put the sugar down to make syrup for the berries and stuff. And then, of course, they weren't that sugared, mostly. You know, the berries were mostly sugar nut. They didn't
no
have the juice on
preservatives.
them.
But this is on the second floor, and he's pouring sugar in this.
Yeah, and it goes
Fun-
right down
It's a funnel.
the tube.
Oh, it would go clear down. Oh, that reminds me.
Yeah, way down to the bottom.
And look at the sugar all over the floor. I bet his wife made him take his shoes off before he went in the kitchen. And we have one more here.
Yeah, that's also at the belts. And I imagine there wasn't enough in there, and they were at the end of the day, and so she was just putting it together to make another.
A lot of standing. I do see
And
some stools back
I
here,
think
but
that's 10-pound cans.
Oh, 10-pound
We
cans.
put them up too.
it doesn't look like anybody's using these stools. That'd be hard work. And long days, I suppose. If the berries are in,
Well-
you have to do them.
Oh yeah, some of those days were long, and once in a while when I'd get through grading, and sometimes Saturday there'd be 6 of the girls and some of them, and I would go in and help at the belt. And I never had work, but one time they were so short that night because they got sick, several of them, and so I put in 13 hours.
Ooh, long day. Long day. Go ahead and tell us some of the farmers' names, because you dealt directly with the farmers when they
Right,
came in. What are
right.
some of the historical names in our
Well,
community here?
we had the Bushoes, and then we had the Linnemans, and we had the Snyders, and we had, there was many, I can't remember, Comptons.
Liskey?
Yes, we had Liskey's, and a lot of those people had just beautiful berries, nice berries. And there was about, when I was there, about 4 or 5 different kinds of berries. And you had to know those so you were sure they went in the right place. So when they went in the can, they went to the right cans.
So you didn't take the beautiful ones and big whole ones and mash them into juice.
And another thing, when the berries were too big, you cut them up because
Is that right?
They're coarser
And
when
now
they're too big.
covet those great big ones. For,
They put
for
that.
heaven's sake. Did you ever find any cheating in the berries when they
Yes,
came?
we did. One day I was grading, and so I asked this fellow, I said, well, what did you bring in today? And he kind of looked at me, and I said, well, we don't usually come this way. And the bottom was hay, and on the top of us berries.
So he put hay and muck in the
And
bottom?
he found out, and I told him to go out and just mark the box and don't tell the people where they put their crates, and then he could find out who did it.
Oh, because it wasn't the farmer. It was just
No,
some picker.
it was the pickers that did that.
Gee, any other little tricks that pickers
Well,
would pull?
one time somebody put little stones in.
Oh, for heaven's
And
sake.
even once they'd put a snuff box in. But that they did just for fun.
Yeah,
you know,
or
put
could have
that
been
in.
an accident, I suppose.
I don't think so.
I know. This just tickles me. Here's little Ida out there, all 5'1", 108 pounds of you, deciding the future, all these berries, and how much money the farmer was going to take home to buy shoes for his kids. You had quite a responsible
of course,
job.
the money I didn't have anything to do, but of course that's what they got per pound, so that's really what they were getting. You know?
Right, right.
But they were a good bunch of farmers. They really were all really good people.
Nice people.
That's right.
Great. Now, the cannery that we're talking about was a co-op. Tell us how a co-op works.
Well, you see, all the farmers, they join, and then you bring your berries there, and that way you got paid by the way they sold them, and sometimes it might run into the next year. But they always gave you enough so you could pay pickers and, you know, your expenses and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a head fellow at the cannery, and then we had a lot of women working in the office too. And then there was about 12, 14 that, you know, got together and decided what should be done and things like that with the things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, all the money went out. All the people were always paid every week. So I mean, they never had to wait for any, you know, anything.
Oh, good.
That way.
Now, that would be kind of a seasonal job that you have. You wouldn't start until the berries came in.
It was a short season. That is when we just had the strawberries and raspberries and boysenberries and youngberries and so forth. But then later on, we put in beans, and we also put up cauliflower and broccoli and peaches. And we did put up a little bit of spinach and also a little bit of a rhubarb. But the rhubarb we didn't last because it didn't sell as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't keep that up. And
So
then
how
we'd work then way up till Thanksgiving. Even one year we
Oh.
worked till the 22nd of December. It was a lovely year.
It must have been a great crop that year,
It was
22nd of
good.
December.
Right.
Oh, boy. We have some raspberry pictures, too. Let's go ahead and show some of these raspberry pictures. I'll take these down. No, those aren't raspberries.
No,
those are
those
big.
would be boysons, or young berries. No,
Okay.
those are. And then there was also a nectar berry some kind, too.
I hate to say they all look alike to me, but
No, you wouldn't if you saw them,
if I
because
knew
these
better,
are
they-
big and they're darker red, you know. And
This-
the boysons are quite large. But they don't seem to raise much of those anymore.
no, I don't see many. Now, this is supposed to be a photograph on the correct way to pick the berries. And I have to admit, when I do that, I wear gloves. I threw this picture in because I thought it was really interesting how this lady has this box roped to her front. And that's how they would
Pick the raspberries.
pick those, because you're
Uh-huh.
up, down, up, down.
Up,
And
down, and then they leave the crates right in the row so they can empty it as they go down along.
that's interesting. And here's a close-up of one of those
Yeah,
boxes.
those are ready.
Apparently it held 2 hallux. And these clothes, just, aren't those interesting? Talk about baggy pants. They're out picking the berries. Must be the raspberries. And this is the close-up of the same girl on the left with her head wrap. Now, I'm surprised they don't have their heads covered more to keep the sun out of their faces, but it wasn't too...
I think the average did, though, you know.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little more about what Gresham was like in the 20s.
Well, for a while there, you know, why they would bring in berries, even in their cars, and they had the side, you know, to sit when you got in the car. There was
Running board?
Yeah, running boards, and they would have them in that back seat, and then on the sides, and it took awfully long to get them out, and there'd be one great big long row of berries coming in, and they had to wait to get unloaded.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
But then, as the time went on, they got pickups and they got trucks, you know, and pretty soon, when they got really big, they had all kinds of trucks that came in every day, and some of them had 3 ton on one truck.
Really?
Both raspberries and strawberries, especially. Well, and then of course the broccoli and cauliflower took big, a lot of room.
You've seen
too.
so many changes in this community.
There is.
You must have some marvelous memories. Tell us about your son and the pony.
Oh, well, where M&M is of today,
The restaurant?
yeah, my son had a pony, and he wasn't a workhorse, he was a pony, and he took his horse down there to have it shod, right there.
There was a blacksmith shop
Right
where
there. He
M&M
just-
is now?
right, he just
Oh,
drove
that's
right in.
great. I have a picture in this book to share. Here it is. Let's see if that's going to stay. Oops, that's not going to stay. Well, I'll just hold it up here. It's this one. And this is a picture of the Ely building, or if it's the Eli building, whichever it is taken in 1922. So you were here. And that building is being used now for Pacific Crest, Main Street Grocery, and Cloud Tree and Son. And in those
That's right.
days, it was a mercantile on the left.
Yes, and you know, they had a store there, and they took everything in. You know, you could sell your turnips and stuff there too, but
Oh,
you had to
really?
bunch them up. And we used to raise turnips, really beautiful turnips. And then they had dry goods, and you could get materials, even as low as 5 and 10 cents a yard.
Is that right?
Just first, you know, there.
And then the middle store is, in this picture, Miller Kidder Hardware, and it was Kidder Hardware when I came to town.
Well, that was here ever since till just a little bit ago.
A little bit ago.
When they put in the
The Main Street
Hicks store and that.
mhm.
And that.
And then the one on the right, which is now Cloud Tree and Son, is the Hessel Implement, and they have Overland cars of some kind, and that's why the new cars are all
That's
lined
right.
up there. I think that's quite a picture. Tell us the story now about the Deedles and the calf.
Well, we took our calf down to have it it was butchered, but we took it down there. And so Mrs. Deedle said that we take the kitties, she said, the little ones, she said, in here, and they don't like to see their cafe god.
No.
So she gave the kids each a weenie, you know.
So that they wouldn't
Everybody
watch
was
the
happy.
calving.
And they made the best summer sausage, and they were Germans. And I'm telling you, their hamburger and their weenies, were just excellent butchers. So of course, naturally, we went over there, and he would tell my husband, "No, we don't have your kind of sausage, summer sausage, and today you got to wait another day."
But that, you took your calf right into town,
Right.
to the back door of Deedle's Meat Market, and
That's
it was
right.
slaughtered right there.
That's right.
Boy, I've heard other people like Dan Murphy talk about Deedle's Meat Market and
That's
how
right.
wonderful it was.
It was.
Tell us about some of the prices of things.
Well, I know that, you know, during those real hard times, you could get 3 pounds of hamburgers for 25 cents. But of course, I don't think Deedle's ever sold it that cheap. But then they had the best hamburgers, so it was worth the price too. And really, milk, you know, your butter maybe was 25 cents.
For a pound?
And you could churn your butter and bring it in if you wanted to, you know. There wasn't.
Right.
And they could get a box of pears that weighed 40 pounds for 75 cents.
Is that right?
Right.
What about the driver's license? This is a great story.
Well, I started to drive a car when I was 15, and you didn't need a driver's license. But when I got married, well, then, and we had a car, well, then, of course, she wanted me to bring it down to Gresham, some things, and then I just sent for 25 cents. And I had that for many years.
You didn't have to take a test?
No, nothing.
Just mail in your 25 cents and they mail you back your driver's license?
That's right.
Oh boy, I'm glad it's not
And
like that
I
now.
never took but one test, so that was years afterwards why I took a test, but I didn't have any trouble with it.
For heaven's sake. You brought with you a cookbook that was published in
23.
1923, a Gresham cookbook, and it was a fundraiser for which organization?
I think it was for the Baptist Church.
The Little Baptist Church, the Bethel Baptist Church, which is now the little building that we've moved into
Right.
to the city park and we want to use as a wedding chapel. And there's one picture in here I'd like to show of this stove. Tell us about this electric stove.
Well, that's the
1923.
way they were, you know. There was 4 burners on there, and all of them were on front of the stoves. And another thing, that's your where you bake your oven on the side of the stove. And you see, they all stood up on legs.
And you said that sometimes the oven wasn't an electric oven, it was still a...
Sometimes they'd have the wood stove on the other side.
Is that right? So you could have either.
You could buy them. They were together.
So if you weren't used to using electricity, you go back to the other way. It sounds like my mother and her microwave. She never did get used to using that thing. Go back to the
But
old
they were
one.
good old stoves.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the schools. You lived out on Hogan Road. Was your farm out on Hogan Road?
Yeah.
Sure, it was by Ray Sheeky's farm out there.
That's right. And when my children started school out there, why, they had benches, you know. They sat 2 on a bench, and underneath was their books. And they just have rows of those, and they weren't movable, you know. And another thing is, we didn't have any running water. And
Oh, the schools didn't have any?
Oh, no. So we people went ahead, the parent teachers, well, we got money enough, so we bought one that we could have a faucet on it. But I guess some could have taken most everybody drank out of it. And I think most of the time maybe they used pretty much the 1 cup even.
They all used the same dipper. And
And-
what about electricity?
Oh, there was no electricity.
Plumbing?
Well, they had, in the later years, first they just had a stove, you know, because when we first got there, why, there was only 1 room, and there were 58 children in that room.
Is that right?
And then when my son started, why, then they had 2 rooms.
And what did
And
the
2
PTA,
teachers.
excuse me, what did the PTA do to raise money?
Well, we gave place, and we did and we made donuts, and we sold homemade donuts for 25 cents, and all the school children went and took these, you know, went and found how many they wanted to all the neighbors, and believe me, the people sure bought them. And
Oh, that's great.
And we did just a lot of things like that to raise money, and we got a piano for our school, and
Wow.
a drinking fountain, and we got a playground, and we got bats and balls and swings, and, you know, every
You
year.
were an active group.
Yes, and the men were nice to go down there if they had any time to put these things together for them. For a fact, they put a play shed up for them.
great.
So that
Now,
was,
what about the school children? Were they different, do you think, than children nowadays?
I really do, because I think all the children, they minded better, and they didn't have these smart aleck, what the children of today are.
You mean children really were seen and not heard? I keep telling my children that, and they don't believe
Well,
me.
they were. Well, I think, though, that it's one good deal that they do hear and do a little bit more, but I think the parents were strict, and now they're trying to be so good to their children, they're just over good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of good children. I find that. I live close to the high school, and I will stick up for a lot of those children. There's some bad eggs in there, and that's why the rest of them get bad.
No, but that's nice to hear that you feel that way about the high school kids.
Yeah,
I know that sometimes they get such a bad reputation because
yeah, but they're a
the
lot
ones
better
you
than they
see
were.
aren't like.
They're a lot better than they were 3 years ago.
Is that right?
But I've lived there, and I'm in the second block, and there's never anyone said or done anything to me.
We have a picture of you when you were, let's see if I can find it here. When you were 15 years old. Oh, I think I put it in my lap, so I'd be sure and have it. Okay, here we are. A picture of you, Ida, you're with the arrow, when you were 15 years old. Now, this is when you were still back in Minnesota.
That's right.
You said that you met Lindbergh, the pilot, just when you were about this age.
Yes, but that was out at a farmer's picnic, and there was a lot of people there, and he had just a small plane, and he must have just been very young, and he was a small fellow then, and he was so bashful, but we were so excited to see that plane,
He became the country's sweetheart, though.
Yes, right, but he was so bashful.
Oh, that's...
But we thought it was great to see that plane, because you never saw one fly over. We never saw one fly over there until World War I.
Is that right?
And then it was maybe only one, and once in a great while.
And you rode in your first car when you were how old?
I think I was maybe about 6, 7.
6 or 7?
And we were we were 6 children, and the doctor in Litchfield had said, if you get your children together, he told my dad, why, we'd get a ride, but there wasn't any door on the back seat. It was just round like this.
Oh my, you could have fallen out.
That is right. You know,
They didn't go very fast.
Oh no, if they went 25 miles, that was fast. And the first car I drove had wooden spokes on it.
Is that
on
right?
the wheels, and we had a Ford, and there was no seat on the side where I was driving. I always had to get out on the other side, and the gas tank was underneath the front seat. So you always
it was?
had, right. So the one that rode with you, my mother didn't like it because she always had to get out. We put gas in the car. She sat in front.
Oh my goodness. Ida, you've really brought some wonderful stories with you. Now, you are busy working for the Gresham Historical Society,
right.
and you're also active in your church.
Right.
And I know our community just thrives on people who volunteer their time like you.
Well, I love to work if I can, and I love people.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, it was nice to do it.
I
I'm
really
happy.
appreciated having you.
Thank you.
On our next show on I Remember When, we're going to have a surprise for you. It will be our 1-year anniversary, and we're going to show you the best of our year. So look forward to seeing all 12 of our last guests, including Ida, and some of the best of what they've had to offer us. I'd also like to give you the post office box of the Gresham Historical Society in case you'd like to drop us a line or comment on the show, or maybe you have some information on us or you'd like to share with us. Please write to us at Box 65, Gresham, Oregon 97030. Thank you a lot for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time on I Remember When. I'm Gwenda McCall. Good night.